We are on page 128 at Tzionut Chilonit, Basis Tzionut Emunit. That secular Zionism, or as it's commonly called in English, National Political Zionism, is the basis for religious Zionism. There's a Gemara in Sota, a very famous Gemara toward the end, Daf Mem Tes on base, the first of our sources for today. Be'kfusa de Mashiach Chutzpah Yazke. In Messianic times, Chutzpah will become powerful, become dominant. Ve'amalchus tehafech leminut, and the government will turn to heresy, or the dominion will return to heresy. Ve'ein tochecha, and there is no rebuke. Dan Yitzhak Abarbanel, in his Sefer Yeshua's Mashiach, the Salvations of Mashiach, in our second source, wants to explain this Gemara. Shbiyot adam bilti notei el hamuna mehamunot. When a person does not incline toward any faith among the faiths, misholel mikulam, stripped of all of them, yikabel yoter b'nei kala ha'amuna ha'amitit misher yikabel b'yoto mutba be'amuna soteret alaha. It will be easier for him to accept the true faith than when he is literally drowning, but surrounded by a faith that is in opposition to it. Ulechen, and therefore, Hayam mechachmat Hashem, it is from the wisdom of God, shekodem biat Mashiach, v'gilui emunat Hashem yitbarach, before the coming of Mashiach, and the revelation of the true faith of God, he should be blessed, tithapech hamalchut leminut, the government will become heretical, v'lo yikablu tochacha mehem alav, and they will not receive any rebuke from their wise men. Kedei shebo melech HaMashiach yahfoch et ha'amim safa brura likro b'shem Hashem u'lovdo shechem echad, so that when Mashiach comes, all the nations will be able to clearly, in one language, call out the name of God and worship Him together. Adkan. This is the end of the quote from the Abarbanel. So if we look at what the Abarbanel say, we see that when a person holds a mistaken faith, it's much harder for him to change to cling to the true faith. When he thinks that and believes that what he holds is truth, even though, in fact, it's perversion, this nonetheless prevents him from listening and accepting what is true, as opposed to the person that has no faith at all. It is much easier for him to accept the correct faith, the correct beliefs. Because of this, the divine providence arranged matters so that before Mashiach comes, before the revelation of the true beliefs, what is correct, there will be a time period before that which will be lacking in faith. This is the basis from which it will be possible to accept what is true and right completely. So too, when we're talking about Zionism, before someone can grab onto and hold onto and cling to the correct, true, deep national values of the land of Israel and its sanctity, he has to be stripped first of those values that are in contradiction, that are faulty. Before the true Zionist spirit can be installed in the nation, there has to be a retreat from the, quote, Zionistic body that is stripped of any value before they can be revealed to them the true essence of Zionism. We see other sources for this. The first Rashi in Chumash, very, very long. It's not really a comment, most of it, I should say, is not really a comment on the first pasuk in Chumash. It's really an introduction to Rashi's commentary on Chumash. And so, in source 3, we look at a very, very famous section from this introduction, widely quoted, widely discussed. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said, this is found in the Midrash Tanchuma. Many people say from here it's proof that Rashi's father, Shlomo Bar Yitzchak, was a Talmud Chacham, but that is clearly not the same because I said it's a Midrash Tanchuma. Lo haya tzarich lahatchilas haTorah ela meha chodesh hazeh lechem. We did not have to start the Torah except from the pasuk of a chodesh hazeh lechem in Shemos, Perek Yud Beis, pasuk Beis. She mitzvah rishona shenitztavu ba Yisrael. It is the first mitzvah which Israel is commanded about. Umatam patach b'Bereshis. So what's the reason that the Torah began with the beginning, with the book of Genesis? Mishum koach masav higid lamo, because the power of his deeds he told to his people. L'teit lehem nachalat goyim, so that he could give them the inheritance of nations. Shim yamru umot ha'olam, that if the nations of the world should say, to Yisrael, listim atem, you're robbers, shekivashtem artos shiva goyim, you conquered the land of 7 nations. Hem omrim lehem, that Israel can say back to them, kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu hi, all of the land belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hu bara'a v'natna l'asher yashar beinav, he created it, gave it to whoever he wanted to. B'rtzono natna lehem, according to his will, he gave it to them. And according to his will, he took it from them and gave it to us. Based upon this Rashi, in the editorial page of Ma'ariv, Erev Shabbos Bereshis Tavshin Mem, October 19th, 1979, the editor writes as follows: Hasur amnam Rabbi Yitzchak v'Rashi imo. Is it possible that Rabbi Yitzchak and Rashi with them thought she'achen yishtaknu hagoyim mitiyun zeh, that the nations of the world would in fact be convinced by such an argument? Havalim, that's nothing. Meaning, they don't accept the veracity of the Torah if they're Muslims, or if they're Christians, they say it was replaced by their thing. So how is it possible that either Rashi or Rabbi Yitzchak felt that this would convince the non-Jews of this? What kind of response is that? Ach lo et hagoyim tzrichim anu l'shachnea b'ti'unenu. But it is not the non-Jews that we have to convince by our arguments. V'lo hema tzricha la'amin b'borei v'kol u'b'zechut Yisrael al aretzo. They do not have to believe in the Creator of everything and the right of Israel to His land. Ki im et atzmeinu. It is that we should be convinced. Penie listin be'einenu, lest we should be robbers in our own eyes. V'zeh hara mikol, and this is the worst of everything. Ki im anachnu einenu maminim b'tzidkatenu, because if we do not believe in our own righteousness, ein lanu kiyum b'makom hazeh, we have no right to be in this place. We will not succeed in staying in this place. V'toin ani, and I argue, mi she'enu ma'amin Bereshit, Einu Yachol Lamin B'Havtacha LaAvraham. The one who does not believe in Bereshit cannot also believe in Avram Avinu. Umi she'enu mamin b'havtacha la'Avraham, and the one that does not believe in the promises made to Avram Avinu, hareu listim hagozel eretz midei yoshveha. Then he must say that we are thieves that have robbed the land from those that dwelled in it. Listim, thieves, lo beinei hagoyim, not the eyes of the nations, ela chamor mizot. It's much more serious than this. Listin be'enei atzmo. He is a robber in his own eyes. There is a new book out about where someone who grew up in the leftist Zionist world just talks about my Israel, the triumph and tragedy of Israel and so on. He talks about all the wonderful things we did, but there were all these consequences. It's so bad and it's so horrible. He doesn't believe in his own rights to things. He doesn't. He's questioning the very basis of his own existence. This is what we're seeing today throughout Israeli society. I mean, the end of 79, you're seeing the very beginnings of it. But by today, the entire left is large portions of it, I should not say the entire left, large portions of the left are saying that it is Arab land, not our land. We have another section in 5 from the newspaper Al HaMishmar, one of the far left, almost communist newspapers in Israel, where the author wrote, "B'rotzini lehityaches kan l'ridatam me'haaretz shel bnei kibbutzim." I want to relate now to the abandonment of the land from the people of the kibbutzim, the children of the kibbutz, of the earlier generations of kibbutzniks. Mishum shekivinu shebehem lo yifga hara hazai. We hoped that this evil wouldn't touch them. Yeridatam shel elu hayevet lahadlik nora aduma betnuat avodah betnuat kibbutzit hachilonit. This yerida, this abandonment of the land, it must light a red light in the labor movement and in the secular kibbutz movement. Tnuot elu avod livdok hechan shagu uma nitan l'takein. These movements, the labor movement and the kibbutz movement, the secular kibbutz movement, must check where they were mistaken and how they can fix it. Vanu chayavim lishol et atzmeinu ketzad ze korei. And we have to ask ourselves how this happened. Shal lafim b'nei kibbutzim me'atnua hakibutzit hachilonit. That thousands of the children of the kibbutzim from the secular kibbutz movement, akru mishoresh tzmichatan hafizit. They have uprooted themselves from the place where they physically sprouted, where they grew up. Hachevratit, their companions, their friends. V'arayonit, their ideas. V'yardu min haaretz, and they went down from the land. B'shah nega hazeh lo paga kemat b'kibbutzim hadatim. When we find that this blemish has not touched, is practically not touched, the religious kibbutzim. Ani mevakesh lehityaches kan le'achad mikormei ha'yirida shemishum ma ein medabrin bo. I want to relate here, I want to talk about here one of the causes of this yirida, of this abandonment of land, that we don't talk about. Chinuch Yehudi Le'umi Tziyuni Shitchi, Jewish national Zionistic education, Shanu Notnim Lebenenu, that we're giving to our children. Ma Yodea ben Kibbutz al Hazika Haragshit HaHistorit Shel Beit Yisrael El Eretz Yisrael. What does a child growing up in a kibbutz know about the emotional, historical connection of the house of Israel to the land of Israel? Kefi shehi ba lidei bitui b'mekorot Yisrael, as it is expressed in all the Jewish sources. Mekorot shehizinu gam et tnua hatzionit mirishita, sources that the Zionist movement looked to from its very founding, from its very creation. As k'sheta megadel dor chaser shorashim Yehudim. So when you raise up a generation that is lacking in Jewish roots, kol nishmatam imhu orez et tarmilo umiyasem et atzmo ba'artzot, they are without a soul, so that they gather up their backpack and they put their footsteps into the nations. Hamavtichot lo haim ramat chayim gvoa yoter, that promise them today a greater, higher level of standard of living. Ubitchon ishi, greater personal safety. La'etata, so now, tov me'asher ba'aretz, is better for them there than it is in Israel. Ube'ein shorashim efshar lekum machar b'boker l'rot she'nenu am. And without roots, you can get up tomorrow and see that there's no longer a nation here. Efshar machar b'boker la'kor mikan, is possible tomorrow morning to uproot from here. Mi'eretz kasha v'dava, from this hard land. L'redet l'hitbolel at, to go down and to be assimilated little by little. Hen ze mash yikra, v'ze mash korei kvar b'mitziut. This is what will happen, and this is what is already happening. Ha'im einenu hashim sha'anu megadlim dorot shel banim hamitchilim lefakpek ba'atzmam zechutenu al haaretz hazot. Are we not raising up a generation of children that is beginning to question what their rights to this land are? It is painful for us that when this was written, the number of the people from kibbutzim that made Yerida was relatively low. Today it is much, much higher than it was then. And continue to look at a article printed, piece of it, a paragraph, 30 years ago approximately, by one of the great leftist ideologues. Bod hitkashrut ha'yisraelit mitvachat al scharam shel kitzinei tzahal. At a time when the Israeli media is debating the salaries of our Israeli army officers, hit mit'alemet mit'alich hademography she'over al tzava, it is hiding from itself the demographic change that is occurring in Tzahal. Kitzona tekeva, the regular army officers, Bikar hakitzona tekravit, specifically the combat officers, Overet hadarga liyadehem shel balei hakipot asrugot. This is going step by step into the hands of those people that wear kippot srugot, knitted yarmulkes. Yeshivot machshirot hayom tzirim datim l'shirut pravi u'lekitzona b'tzahal. The yeshivot prepare people, their young religious people, for combat service and officer service in Tzahal. Zehu project mutzlach me'od hamaspik letzahal koach adam meshubach. This is a very successful project that provides the army, the Israeli army, with a very high level of manpower. Patriotic, Bal motivatzia gvoa, very highly motivated. Hadatim hayom mehavim kimat machzit mibnei hachativot hakraviyot. The Dati'im today are almost 50% of combat units. Ha'achuz yelech v'yigdal b'mihirut. The percentage is growing very quickly. Hu yachlif ba'od 5 shanim et ha'achluchsit megadim ve'mechatim. In another 5 years, it will change the population of the battalion and brigade commanders. Uba'od 15 shana, in another 15 years, et Merei Hamatkal, the appearance of the general staff. This wasn't written as long ago as I said. It's much newer than that. I would like to note at this point that it was not true when this was written, but the previous Deputy Chief of Staff, Yair Naveh, was a Dati person. So we have had our first person who wears a kippah sruga in the general staff, in the highest level of command of the Israeli army. But I have to say that it's not only a one-way process, because the newest round of appointments for brigade commanders, the last round of appointments that the current Chief of Staff can make before he leaves, Gantz, did not include a single Dati person. And that's the first time in many, many years that such a thing has happened. And with the retirements from brigade commanders, this is the first time in about 15, 20 years that there has not been a Dati brigade commander in the Israeli army. But that doesn't change the fact that in general the army has been moving in this direction. These things that we just read were said about the nation in general from a person who looks at it from an outlook that's very different from ours. But you see from what he's saying that they are losing their grip and their ability to pass on to their children this love, desire, and caring for the state of Israel. It's interesting to note that if you go back to 1967, 4% of Israelis lived in kibbutzim over the Six-Day War. 25% of combat casualties in the war were from kibbutzim. The motivation, the nationalist caring and love for the land and the state that generation gave to their children, the generation that fought in 67 was unable to pass on to their own children. And that is bothersome to what shall we call in general the second generation of kibbutznikim. The first generation are the people that founded the kibbutzim. And that as long as people were coming and founding them, it seems that they were able to pass on to their children their love and caring for the land. It was after that generation that we see that there is a problem in passing that on, that to a certain sense has been forewarned by what Dan Yitzhak Arbonel wrote, that there has to be this loss of values first before people can adopt the proper values. next section in the chapter. Hayachas liridot ruchaniyot. How should we relate to spiritual setbacks? Rav Kook Zitzal wrote in Mamrei Hariyah. Mamrei Hariyah is one of the few svarim of Kook that isn't part of the set that comes out, that's put out by Mosad Rav Kook of Rav Kook's writings. And it is articles that he published during his lifetime that were later collected for publication. So he wrote there, page 451, Lo b'pam harishona pogshim anu b'divrei yameinu mitzav ayom miduldal mimuvnei hachomri. It's not the first time that we meet in Divrei Yameinu, in the Divrei Yamim, the chronicles of our times, a situation where we have physical problems, ubiyuchud b'muvan haruchani, and even more so spiritual problems. Mitzav she'atzarich lahavi lidei hitmarmarut shel yeush, things that could bring people to absolute giving up, the abandonment of hope. Read through, Malachim, read through Shoftim, and so on. Aval anu einenu nifchadim, but nonetheless we are not afraid. Einenu noashim, we do not abandon hope mikol yirida, even though there are descents. Betuchim anu, ki netzach Yisrael lo yishaker v'lo yenachem. We are certain that the Eternal One of Israel will not lie, and he will not regret his promises. Ume'ofel u'ma'achshach, or Yeshua Yisrach, and from the fog and darkness the light of salvation will shine forth. K'sha'anu ba'im l'tekufat hashoftim, u'biyichud l'tekufato shel Avimelech ben Yerubal. When we look at the period of the Shoftim, specifically the period of Avimelech ben Yerubal, look at Shoftim Perek Tet if you want to see that at length. Zavul v'Gaal v'Anshe Shechem v'anu margishim et dildula chomri ve'aruchani shel ha'uma az. Its disgustingness and low corruption, and we feel how physically and spiritually depressed and at a low level the nation was at that time. Tigrot v'harigot v'sha'uriyot, the murder, corruption. Botzrim kramim v'osim hilulim b'beit elilehem. They harvest their vineyards and they make parties in their idolatrous houses. Techashchena einenu, our eyes become dark. Avel kasha'anu me'efim ayin mizeh v'hala v'nei or noga. But when we look from here on, we see a great light. Shmuel, David, Shlomo, Binyan Hamikdash, Mamlacha Adira, Torah, Chachma, Nevuah, V'ruach HaKodesh, Memshalah, Mishpat, B'tzedek. We see Shmuel the Navi, who appoints Saul and David as king. We see Shlomo as the king. We see the construction of the temple, a powerful kingdom, Torah and wisdom, prophecy, Holy Spirit, dominion, justice, righteousness, Ruach Hashem Neshav, the Spirit of God rests upon the people, Ha'anim Pozrim, the clouds part, V'shemes Tzedakah Zoreach, this light of righteousness shines, V'shimsho Shel Yisrael Sholeach Karnaim Yifa, and the Son of Israel sends out beautiful, complete horns of light. End of Rav Kook's essay. What we feel from reading the words of the Rav is that from the time that the people of Israel, that the people of Israel cannot in any way, shape, or form give up, because the nature of Israel is to be eternal. The comparison of Skulat Yisrael, the beloved Israel, to the sun, that even though the clouds cover it sometimes, and sometimes we can't see it, but over time the clouds are blown away, and the sun is again revealed to our eyes. So too it is with Am Yisrael. Sometimes there are internal struggles within the soul of the nation, and so it cannot be seen outwardly what it is, but inwardly it remains, and eventually the clouds are pushed away for the nation to be rebuilt. The Navi tells us, Ha'ani ashbir v'lo olid, Yomar Hashem. Will I bring the woman to the birthing spool and not be able to cause her to give birth, says God. Im ani hamolid ve'atzarti. Am I the one that causes birth and I stop it? Amar Elokayich, says your God. Rashi explains there, Ani ashbir v'lo olid. Can I bring to the birthing stool and not cause it to come to allow the woman to give birth? This is source 3, Rashi. Hani aviyat isha al hamashbar v'lo eftach rechma lahotzi ubra. Will I bring the woman to the birthing spool and not open her womb to bring out her fetus? Kolomar, shema atchil b'davar v'lo uchal ligmor. Is it possible that God can begin something and incapable of finishing it? Meaning, can he begin the process of redemption but be unable to complete the process of redemption? The first message that we get from here is that once the process is begun, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God's deeds are not random. He is not fickle. When God guarantees us something, he will complete what he begins. The connection to what we have been clarifying until now, we can see in these words that Chavlei Leida, the birth pangs of a woman, are extremely painful. And so are Chavlei Mashiach, so are the birth pangs of Mashiach. The birth pangs of Mashiach are the birth pangs of Israel's redemption. That they also hurt. But after the birth pangs of the woman are over, she gives birth to a child that nothing is more precious to her and to the father. Also, the birth pangs of the nation, as it appears, right? It gives birth to its national soul. And although it's a painful process, in the end, nothing can have greater value, have greater importance than that to us. There is something else about birth pangs that is critically important for understanding this. And that is, if you think about birth pangs, they come and they go. There are points of pain, and in between, there is a point of relaxation. If you remember a long time ago, we talked about the pasuk from Hosea, Lo Yom V'Lo Laila. Leit Erev Ye'or. There is a day that is neither day or night. There is neither light or darkness. And in the evening there is light. And normally when the evening comes, there's darkness, not light. Right? And Rashi explained that it's a period of time that is neither exile nor redemption. But at the end of this intervening period that is neither exile or redemption, there will be total redemption, there will be total light. But in the meantime, there is the struggle between the two. There are the points of pain, and there are the points of relaxation. In the Yom Kippur War, it was a very long war by Israeli standards, and even after the fighting was over, until disengagement agreements could be reached, the reserves were kept up for many, many months. And people, as the time that people served stretched out for months, people were given passes to go home, visit their family, 48 hours, 72 hours, and then come back. And one of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook's Talmidim, who had fought for 3 weeks on the Golan Heights, was very, very disturbed by what he had seen. This is natural. And he couldn't understand how such a thing could happen once the redemption had begun. And when he arrived in Yerushalayim, it was early in the morning, 2 a.m., something like that. And he immediately went to Rav Kook's house and knocked on the door. And Rav Kook peeked outside to see who was there. And then he opened the door, and he said, Eifo mismach? Where's the document? And the Talmid thought that Kook mistook him for an army messenger. He said, no, I'm not a messenger. I'm your Talmid, Meir ben David. And he said, Rav Kook said, yes. Eifo mismach, where's the document? Back and forth. Finally, Rav Kook says, you think you came here because you think there's a document that's telling you exactly how redemption is going to come, and once we've won our independence, once we won the 67 war, that everything's going to go immediately, that we're not going to have any more troubles. What are you talking about? We have no guarantees as to how the process of redemption is going to go on, what's going to happen with it, where it's going, how it's going. And one of the points that we have to take is that it is a process that has its difficulties in it. How difficult is really to a certain extent, is our next section, which is called Yete V'lo Chamine, which is taken from Gemara and Sanhedrin. We'll see what that means in a minute. There is an argument among the Amoraim concerning the coming of Mashiach. Source 1. Sanhedrin Tzadi Ches Amud Beis. Amar Ula. Ula said, Yete v'lo ichmine. Let Mashiach come, but I don't want to see him. V'ken Amar Rava. And also Rava said this. Yete v'lo ichmine. Let him come, but I don't want to see him. Rav Yosef Amar Yete. Let him come. Ve'ezke de'etiv betula de kefita dechamre. A very strange Aramaic phrase that Rashi translates it for us. Let Mashiach come, and I should be zoche to sit b'tzel harei shel chamoro, in the shade of the urine of his donkey. Kolomar, what does that mean? Rashi says, afilu b'kach ani rotzei u'b'vad shareno, even in such a way, meaning that I'm covered by the urine of Mashiach's donkey, nonetheless I'd like to see him coming. Ula and Rava, some of the most famous of the Amoraim, giants among giants, did not want to be present when Mashiach came because of all the great difficulties and pain that would accompany Mashiach's appearance. Rav Yosef, on the other hand, wanted to be there, even with these difficulties. Not only this, he saw a great merit in sitting in the shade of the droppings of the donkey of Mashiach. The donkey is a symbol of physicality and how we look at the physical nature of Eretz Yisrael. And the excrement of the donkey is the lowness of the physical existence that we can come to in Eretz Yisrael. Many years ago, there was a time when most people in Eretz Yisrael, only a very, very tiny minority of people in Eretz Yisrael put on tefillin. Only a small number of people observe Shabbat. But in our times, we see that this number is growing constantly. Nonetheless, we have pain and suffering from it. There are things that we have to strengthen ourselves with, that we have to be willing to sacrifice for. That's what Rabbi Yosef meant. There's going to be problems, there's going to be difficulties, but you can't give up. Yeah, you're covered in stuff from the donkey, but nonetheless, right, there's a lot that can be done. And especially for B'nai Torah, Talmidei Chachamim, that their purpose, the special obligation that they have is to raise up the spirit of the nation. How do we relate to people? Is it by bringing them down or bringing them up? I'll tell one other story about my Rabbi Rue Drukman, the author of the Sefer we're learning, of course, that during the months that people were called up during the Yom Kippur War, there were women without husbands from the kibbutzim of the south, and at some point a group of them came to Rav Drukman and asked them to give these women a shiur. And so one day a week the women came from all over the Negev, Shar HaNegev, to Rav Drukman's house, and he delivered them a shiur. After 3 or 4 months, the first time any one of their husbands was given leave, and he came home from the war. Now, from the Sinai front, they were generally given a 72-hour leave. It generally took 24 hours to reach home. You'd have about 24 hours at home, and it would take you 24 hours to get back to your unit. So you don't actually have that much time at home. And, you know, people didn't have cars in those days. Everything was by buses. To take a bus across the Negev would take a long time. And this woman dragged her husband to the shiur. A shiur of all women, one man. And he was very angry and upset. And everything Rav Drukman said, he argued with. And so Rav Drukman thought, listen, the guy's been on the front for 3 or 4 months, finally gets home. His wife drags him to a shiur for hours and hours he's not interested in doing. He has to suffer. So I have to suffer a little bit too. But for every question the person asked, he would take out a sefer and show him that someone had already asked that question. And his other husbands came home on leave. Their wives also brought them. And when the war ended and all of them came home, the shiur continued for over 30 years, with husbands and wives coming to the shiur. The Rav said no one became firm, no one became observant because of the shiur. But their relationship toward the religion changed from being opposed to being friendly. Also, the Gra writes in Kol HaTorah, our second source that we have for tonight on this section. Ladat mirosh, you have to know from the beginning. Be'ekvut meshiche, mikol tsara yotze it Yeshua. In the footsteps of Mashiach, from every pain comes out salvation. V'Yeshua ba mitoch tsara, and the salvation comes from inside of the pain and the suffering. Ladat mirosh, you have to know from the beginning. Ki Eretz Yisrael niknei b'yisurim, that the land of Israel is only acquired in suffering. Avo b'zei niknei mamash, but now it's really acquired. Chalilu lanu l'seget achor b'mashu. It is prohibited to us. It should be prohibited, something that we don't even think about, to retreat. Im yeh chas v'shalom ezehu koshi, if there is a difficulty. Ezehu mechshala b'derech avodatenu, if there is tripping in the way that we have to go to work. Liot betuchim, we have to be sure. Ki davka mimenu Yaakov yivasha, it is only through this suffering, through this tripping, through this tribulations that Yaakov will be saved. Umin hameitzer, and from the difficult place, nagia lemerchavia, we will arrive at broad open places. Min hameitzer karatika, anani b'merchavka. Right, from travails I call to you. I call to you, and you answer me. The reality that Eretz Yisrael is acquired through suffering is not something new of the Gra. Shimon Bar Yochai said it in the Gemara in Brachos. But the Gra connected it to the time that we are living in. It's not only that we have to deal with the difficulties, but it's through the difficulties that we can strengthen our faith. We can grow spiritually. It should not cause us to lose faith. In difficulties, you do not weaken your belief system, but you have to believe that it is through the difficulties that you can grab onto the process of redemption. There was Edmund de Rothschild in Paris, who was known for a long time as a Nadiv HaYadua, the well-known donor, who was very, very involved in donating money to build businesses, industries, buy land, buy more land, build cities on the land. He bought the land and built five now major cities in Israel, and land that was not developed in his lifetime, only much, much, much later was developed, and so on. And he constantly got letters of complaints that this wasn't working, that wasn't working, they needed new money for this, they needed new money for that. And he'd almost given up. He'd had it. And his wife, who was a cousin of his from Frankfurt, comes in and says to him, listen, I have a tradition from our father's house that Ein Eretz Yisrael Nikne Ele B'Yisurin, that the land of Israel cannot be acquired except through suffering. For us, the money isn't anything. We spend more money on art than we do on settlements and land in Eretz Yisrael. The suffering that we have is that we have to hear all these complaints about everything that's going on. It's not working properly. That there's always this and this and this that has to be done. That's the way we have to suffer through it. And of course, he continued to buy and build and so on. From suffering, you have to develop a plan build, to grow. Every time there is a setback, something has to come out of it. Well, in this period of truce, semi-truce, ceasefire, sort of ceasefire, between the end of having fighting and the release of the reserves at the end of the Yom Kippur War, a group of people came to meet in Rav Drukman's house, and they formed an organization that no longer exists called Gush Emunim. And up to that point, there had only been settlements, really 2 settlements, in what became the Gush Etzion, and there was Kiryat Arba, and that was it, nothing else. And they decided that what they had to do to advance the Zionist enterprise was to settle other parts of Eretz Yisrael. And after they founded the organization, they went to get to Yehuda's bracha, to Yehuda Cook's bracha for it, which he gave. He was very active in directing it. And at one point, one of their meetings, when they were still very small, had at most a few hundred people, someone said, he asked Yehuda for a bracha that they should have 1,000 people or something like that. And the person who was the director general at the time of Gush Emunim said that, no, I want tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And to that, Yehuda said amen, that they should have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. When exactly what the Gra said, it is from the tzara that the salvation sprouts. If it had not been for the challenge of the Yom Kippur War, we wouldn't have settled places like Shiloh, places that was the Israeli capital for 300 years in the period of the Shoftim and so on. We have to realize, we have to understand that every challenge and every difficulty is an opportunity for us to grow and develop. Next week we will continue with this chapter with Anochi Hu Menach Mechem, understanding the way of comfort.